Well, the Baptists go by water and the Methodists go by land. But I tell you, my friend, if you want to get to heaven, then you gotta go hand in hand. As Jesus taught the people by the Sea of Galilee, he said, I'm the door that leads to heaven, and you must come in by me. The door's so low you can't get under it, so high you can't climb over it, so wide you'll never get around it. You must come in at the door.
Hello and welcome to episode 27 of Let's Hear It. Today's episode is all about Rickard Banjos, and I'm lucky enough to have Bill Rickard as my guest. He makes incredible old-time style banjos, open back banjos for clawhammer, frailing style. But of course you can also play bluegrass style on them, any kind of style on them. And he makes a Racophonic banjo as well, which is really interesting, and we'll get a look at one of those. And we have some videos that we'll see of people playing his banjos, and he also makes banjo parts, so particularly tuners. He, over a 3-year period, created a special type of geared tuner that are great for banjos. They're called the Rickard Cyclone, so we'll hear about those. He also makes brackets, tension hoops, all the shoes that hold the brackets onto a banjo rim. And he's also recently begun making guitars, so we'll hear a little bit about that, maybe get a few pictures of those. In addition, Bill has quite an incredible and inspiring story. About 18 years ago, he was in a terrible motorcycle accident in Italy, and he lost his left arm and his left leg, and thankfully survived and went through a lot of rehab, and he'll tell us about how music played a huge role in getting him back to wanting to take on this project of building banjos, and how incredible it is that he's done it. And before I bring Bill on, I think he had sent me a video from a TV show in Canada called 16 by 9, which really tells his story in a beautiful way. So we'll take a look at that, and then we'll bring Bill on. So here you go.
Musical genius comes in different forms, sometimes in the virtuoso of the musician, other times in the craftsmanship of the person creating the instrument. Bill Rickard is among that elite school, a man whose labor of love came through unlikely means. And while he doesn't play himself, he's still found a way of making music. Usually the banjo needs 2 hands to play, one to pick, the other for the chords. But sometimes one hand can make beautiful music too. Like in the case of Bill Rickard. Some would call him disabled, but watch him for a moment or two and you'll forget his body is missing vital parts.
Boy, this is sounding really good, Bill.
That took a long time to get that one right.
As a younger man, Bill loved to play the banjo. When he lost that ability, he found another way to build a melody.
I built everything. I built all the hardware. I mean, the hooks, I built everything. Geez, I did one thing and the word got out on the internet and it got bigger and bigger. It got out of control.
Today, his banjo-making factory, about a half-hour north of Toronto, has turned his life around. Look at Bill in this video taken a few years ago. He was a tortured, unhappy man who had lost his will to live. It was all because of this yellow Ducati. He was riding it on a highway in Italy when he hit a truck.
I remember seeing my hand up by my visor on my motorcycle helmet, and it was just bone. I thought, my God, I've lost my arm. And my friend ran up, took his helmet off, told me not to move, and he started to cry, and he walked away, and I thought, my God, this is real bad.
Bill lost his arm and leg. It wasn't until his 60s that Bill reconnected to the instrument this time making banjos instead of playing them.
This is called a Tree of Life inlay.
This is the first one he built for musician and friend Chris Cool. Today, Bill's factory is like a customized playground, building toys for musicians like Arnie Naiman.
He designed these machines with a hydraulic foot pedal on, and he could do all this himself. And so he was doing so much himself, which is like difficult for a normal person to do with all of his limbs and everything else. And he had figured out he was just so determined to figure out how to make this thing work for him.
Here, a machine shapes a strip of cherry wood into a perfect circle. This will be the banjo rim.
This is good for a couple hundred years now. This will last forever.
Next, computers do the kind of fine carving that no man, not even Bill, could do by hand. Then, a robotic router fashions a banjo with almost microscopic precision. And finally, the fine, detailed finishing work done by Bill himself. There is a gentle melancholy in all of this, a labor of love that is torturous, like every once in a while when Bill's missing arm wants to play again.
So if I sit and concentrate to music too hard, my left hand, which isn't there in my brain, automatically goes up to that playing position where my fingers would go. My arm's frozen like that on the left side. It wants to, if it goes there in my brain, it takes this phantom limb up there, but it's also saying it's frozen in this position. I can't do that anymore because I'd be on the floor in pain.
So he escapes that pain with something else, the sheer joy of building an instrument that someone else will treasure.
Somebody will be playing that in a kitchen, hopefully, and having a great time and enjoying that music, and you're part of that. To see them sit and play something that I created I can't explain how much of a good feeling that is.
How are you? Nice
Having
to
a
see
great
you.
day. I woke up this morning, so it's a good day.
Indeed. And I mean, obviously that's an incredible story. And but I really think the story is how great your instruments are. And that's what I want to talk about with you. And so I know that you just for a little bit of the background, before you had that accident, I know you'd made some instruments when you were younger, and then you moved into manufacturing, and not manufacturing of instruments, but that's where you learned about factories and how machines can do a lot of work. So maybe just give us a little background on that.
Well, I started building banjos, I guess I was about 16, 17 years old. And it was interesting. I wanted a guitar at the time, or a banjo. I forget which one, what order it was in. And I thought my dad was really being unfair, because he said, well, you have to get a job or make one. He was a carpenter. And I thought it was crazy. At that age, I thought banjos grew on trees somewhere in Spain. Anyways, you got to remember too, in the 1960s, there was no internet. So I went to the library and found one building classical guitar, which I built. I could play it. And I built an electric guitar right after that, which was playable. And then swung into banjo shortly after. And naturally, every one you build, you think the next one is going to be better. So I moved on from that. And you missed one part out. Funny, I didn't start in manufacturing. I was what you call a tunnel rat. To be honest with you, I was a land surveyor that worked in tunnels, underground tunnels, mostly in compressed air, building Toronto subway system, stuff like that. And my wife's father had owned a company called General Conveyor, which is a misleading name. It's where we do industrial automation. And he'd fallen sick and unfortunately had cancer. And I took a leave from my regular job and went in to help him. And 6 months later, unfortunately, he did pass away. And I was left with this company for a family business to sell or run or whatever. And we dug in, my wife and I, and turned the company around. And we've been at it now. I've been at it 42 years, I guess now, roughly. Wow. Manufacturing. And through that, by the way, I stepped in, I didn't have a clue. It's like building banjos. I didn't have a clue what I was getting into. And I just kind of taught myself. We do a lot of packaging machines. Example, if you have an aerosol can in your house that has a spray top in it, I originally put that patent on the first machines that did that automatically. And we can do now we put in these valves in these cans at about 600 a minute. All designed in a placemat, having a beer with a couple of guys, by the way. So it wasn't that high tech. And that one thing led to the other. And I really stopped playing for years because of this being in the manufacturing business. It totally consumed me. It was 7 days a week. And started playing again when I was in my late 40s, when I met Chris Cool, in fact. And he got me playing clawhammer style. I'd always played three-finger style bluegrass music. And he got me into playing clawhammer music, and we became very good friends from that and going on. And the rest, I guess, is history. I got involved. Unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, I got involved with a very serious accident. It was a kind of business pleasure trip. And first day in Italy, and a young man in a truck came across the center line and hit me. The interesting part about that story, I'll kind of keep it short because Sean, who's sitting next to me here, has heard it 100 times. When I had the accident, as you can tell, it was a very serious accident. They didn't think I was going to live because I actually cut the arteries above my heart and the arteries of my leg. And they don't know how by chance, somebody had a phoned the hospital, which is a short distance up the road, a little country hospital. They got me, the ambulance turned up in a flash. I was with it until they got me in the ambulance. I remember telling them I couldn't speak Italian. And they got me to this small country hospital, and the doctor there was smart enough to call an air ambulance in. And what was interesting, when my wife arrived, I found out from the surgeon in Pavia, where they took me, who spoke English, explained to my wife that it was not only a bad day for our family, but the doctor that actually really saved your husband's life went home and found out his son had been in an accident. And he was a 20-year-old, and he was driving a truck, and he was so the doctor that saved my life, it was his son that hit me. That was not known at the time. I found that out after, and that was in the paper, one of the Italian newspapers. Wow. And totally it. I should have stayed home, bought lottery tickets, I think. But I think it took probably 6 to 8 months, and I lying around feeling sorry for myself, and I went through a lot of pain naturally. And I decided I was always going to build banjos and guitars when I retired. And I feeling bad, I thought, well, that's not going to happen now. It's impossible. And I thought, well, I've been automating people the last 40 some odd years. Now we've time to automate myself, and started building devices to build instruments. And it's funny, I've come to the conclusion that it's not, people think it's amazing, but you'd be amazed, I think, what people will come up with if they have to. Simple things like sanding, you just do everything backwards with one hand. So it's hard to explain, but you work it out in your mind, and there's always a way to do it. There's always another way. Yeah. And some of the ways I think I've come up would probably be great for two-handed people. Makes it quite straightforward. And a lot of jigs and a lot of help. I mentioned Sean is just sitting here next to me. He's my left arm, you could say. He started with me very early. Yeah. We laugh. We say he came in one day to buy a bridge and he didn't leave. And he had the right background. He came out of the auto industry. He had a body shop, him and his dad, and they were thinking about getting out of it at the time. And Sean came back a couple of weeks later and asked if he could give me a hand. And I spun off from there. So really, Sean is the expertise here. I say now he's an amazing, because he's been in the auto industry, he can finish instruments like I couldn't do even when I had two arms, to be very honest with you. So it's been a very good relationship, and we've expanded it from there, and hence where the banjos are now into guitars.
Wow. Well, it's an amazing story, and it just makes the fact that your banjos are fantastic. It makes the story behind them even better. I think that obviously a lot of love and belief has been put into making them and designing them, and
a lot of passion. I think if you have passion, you can be successful at anything.
Yeah, and I'm going to show a little video now. We'll show Lucas Poole playing, and he's one of my favorites. I love the way he plays. He has a very slow style. He also is building banjos as well. I think it's Ozark Banjo Company, I believe.
That's correct.
But he's a fantastic player, as you'll see. So let's check this out. And this is one of your Spun-over brass banjos he's playing here.
Okay.
Wow. That's a beautiful sound. I love his slow playing. I know that obviously, as you saw there in the end, he can play fast as well, but he plays so beautifully when he plays slow. And the banjo has such a beautiful tone. So it must be fun for you to see great players playing your banjos.
Yeah, it makes it all worth it. It
Yeah.
really does. I can't explain enough how good you can feel when you see somebody else play something you built. So I'm now a great listener. And Lucas, by the way, is a really good player. So he's one of the best.
Yeah.
He's turned out to be a very good instrument builder also.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw there's an old time online banjo festival they've been having. I think it's run by Brad Kolodner and Kathy Fink.
Right.
And they've had 2 of them this summer, and they just had one, and a ton of great players submitted for the contest, like as if it was an old time fiddle banjo festival. They had an online contest, and Lucas won that. And he just plays so great. That's always fun to hear him play. And I know his wife is a great fiddle player too. So that works out well when you marry the fiddle player, or if you're the woman, you marry the banjo player, vice versa.
Get your own band right away.
Yeah, you're ready to go.
Right.
So you have I think 7 different models that you make, and is there a particular one that is your favorite, or is there any is it like children where you love them all?
I say we love them all.
Yeah.
Naturally, there's always something new coming along. The Spun-overs are something that I don't know what inspired me to try it, but nobody's building real true Spun-overs anymore. Spun-over meaning the rim that you see in that banjo has no joints in it at all. It was spun out of a flat sheet on a spinning lathe, and it's quite anybody can see metal spinning. It's quite interesting how it's done. And it's all done by hand usually. A lot of CNC equipment now, but that one is done by hand. I actually contract those out, though. I did the first ones, the prototype ones. And there's a fellow in the next town that's a metal spinner, kind of a cranky guy that does stuff by hand still, and does a great job. And they sound, I really like, personally, I like the sound. And like I say, there's nobody else really building a true spun banjo. I checked back into the history of it, and I found out a lot of the banjos, the ones other people are building today, they're really what we call a metal clad banjo. In other words, they weld them at the roll-it material. They weld it at the under the neck where the neck sits, and then they just bead the rolled edges in. And it's just a different approach. The difference when you spin, you have to anneal the brass many times, or else it'll crack on you. It hardens. And I'm sure that's what gives it a slightly different sound from a straight metal clad banjo. So that's one, I would say that's probably my favorite, but I like them all, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Tell us about the Racophonic one, and we'll show a little video of Frank Evans playing that. Actually, let me show the video, and then we'll talk about this.
Okay. He's a good player.
That's amazing. I mean, that's such a beautiful looking instrument too. So tell us about that one. And I know I think there's a few in the history of banjos that had that kind of look, but nothing quite like that. So how'd you come up with that?
Well, I was actually talking to somebody who was building Racophonic guitars at the time, and they had a shot at building, but they really built the banjo look. It looked like a banjo, but it was really a guitar. It wasn't done a totally different principle. So the first ones we built, we actually put a tubaphone tone ring in them. And in the end, we found that it didn't make a lot of difference, the tone ring that was under it sat underneath the spun cone.
Yeah.
It was kind of a whim, I guess, we started. It just kind of evolved into what you see. You can say all the parts there, because fortunately I have a laser machine in my other business, and it'll cut up to 1-inch plate steel. So to cut that was very easy. And we cut it in-house on our own laser. And it just kind of evolved, is the best way to put it. A lot of fun. It was a fun project.
Yeah.
And we found a lot of musicians that play that. An example is Steep Canyon Rangers, which is Graham Sharp. He has one. I guess Ned Dobreski. He has a Spun-over. There's Frank, as you know. Chris Cool. He's played it many times. He doesn't have one yet, but I'm going to twist his arm on that one. I guess the big one really is Ricky Skaggs' group, Russ Carson, who I know Russ's dad from way back, and he plays one also. So it kind of evolved into something. I figure some of these guys that can play so well, they get bored and they like the sound of something different and what they can do with it. It gives them some options to play. You can actually make it sound like a dobro. You can make it sound like a guitar. You name it. It's a very different sound. So that's a fun project. It's really taken off too. Which is kind of I didn't expect it to, but it did. So
great. And then I know you told me you're starting to build guitars again, and I know you were really excited about that. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, guitar building is something I've always wanted to get back into, because I started with guitars, and I usually build dreadnought guitars. It was kind of because I was playing bluegrass music, so that you needed to have a dreadnought to really do flat picking on. And I got into, as you know, we built a new tuner, which we can talk about in a little while. But these new tuners led me to talking to Frank Ford, in fact, at Griffin Music. And he said, Bill, he said, don't worry about banjos. He said, the guitar market's huge. And I said, yeah, but these are banjo tuners. He said, well, Martin used to use them in an OM guitar. And they were the favorites. And I guess they stopped because they wouldn't stay in tune. So we we thought, well, let's build a guitar that uses an OM, like the old model OM guitar. And that kind of spun us into that. And since I've kind of fallen in love with that smaller body, I can't play it, but I like to listen to it. It's a great guitar for finger picking, or really any music, I think. I never thought I'd like a smaller body guitar, because I got so used to playing dreadnought guitars, but I'm kind of converted now, you could say. And they're very high end. We're trying some different ways to build. A fellow joined my company a while back, and he had training in guitar building professionally. I've always been a self-taught guy, so it was kind of nice to see some traditional ways to do things over what we were doing, and kind of joined it all together. But you're going to see a lot more of the guitars coming up very shortly.
I can't wait to see those. And as you mentioned, you've also, the tuners that you've created for banjos, replacement tuners and geared tuners, are fantastic. And every time I play one of your banjos, now I don't own one yet, but I will soon. But I do play quite a few of them, because I travel all around the country, so I go to music stores everywhere. And I luckily run into your banjos all over the place. I'm always amazed how nicely they tune. And I did buy a set of tuners from you about 8 months ago that I'm going to put on an old Fairbanks banjo that I'm fixing up. So.
Well, the tuners were interesting. We actually didn't start out to do that particular tuner. In fact, I'm going here sitting next to me. This is a tuner we built. It's a standard 4-to-1 planetary, a little bit larger casing, because it's got 12-tooth gears in it instead of the standard 6. Mm-hmm. So we worked on perfecting that, and then we obsoleted them right away, because we figured doing this, I thought, my God, these things, they slip. You got to tighten the button up all the time. And being my background in the material handling industry, we use a lot of what they call a Sumitomo drive. These are quite big, and there's what they call a cycloidal system. I'm talking like they're usually a 2-foot diameter gearbox. And the principle of them is, which I didn't realize at the time, but on a cycloidal system, when you rotate your input shaft clockwise, the output shaft always turns anti-clockwise. And which you can imagine trying to tune a guitar like that, that'd be impossible.
Yeah.
And so the trick wasn't so much this. It was very tricky to get the cycloidal tuner into it. You can't tell the difference, but this is the cycloidal one. It's got a much smaller casing. And the problem was to get the rotation the same way. And it took 3 years to get it. And I remember talking to Frank Ford at Griffin again, and he tried this, and he said, Bill, he said, it won't work. He said, they turn the opposite way. He built a couple. He said, that's something you got to get used to. And I said, well, I'm going to send you one after this. Took about 3 years back and forth. And I said, try this one. And he got back. He said, how the hell did you do that? It was kind of luck too, I got to admit. We printed it, 3D printed it in plastic. And it came to us. We tried it, a particular method, making the real part out of metal. And by doing it, by printing it double the size, I could figure out what was happening. And we changed the design slightly. But these don't have any gears per se. They're like almost a lobe is the best way to describe it. They work totally different than a regular gear tuner. And the beauty of it is, which you didn't really think about at the time, but you cannot turn the output shaft through by string tension. It's impossible. You can put it in a bench and put vice grips on that output shaft and you will not rotate it. You've got to use the button to turn it, in other words. So hence they stay in tune. And that kind of we put it in all our banjos now. Everything goes out the door, has our new 10-to-1 ratio tuners. We tried for a banjo, we were going to do the fifth, and I actually designed some. And we came to the conclusion, to be honest with you, being the fifth tuner on a banjo is normally a worm gear tuner. So they've already running 15-to-1 ratio roughly. So you just can't build a cycloidal tuner for the kind of cost you could do with the planetary tuners. Hence, they are more expensive. But if you saw inside, you'd understand the precision of them.
Yeah. So
basically, we went back to standard worm gear. We use, in this case, a Goto one just because they're reliable and whatnot. We have one we could do, but it didn't see any great advantage, and it'd be expensive to build.
Yeah.
So we decided to stick with the 5-to-1, and guitar we just used. Naturally, we used the cycloidal tuners on all of them. So
can't wait to see the guitars and see how those tuners look on there, because I do love the old Martin guitars that had the banjo tuners on them.
Yeah.
So let me. So you probably sell a lot of banjos to music stores, and then you also get customers who just come directly to you and buy banjos, I'd imagine. And so how many banjos do you guys make a month roughly? What is?
Boy, that's a tough one to answer.
Yeah. Because
we do a lot of custom work.
Right.
The stuff we do direct is always custom, something different. It's not a standard model.
Yeah.
But boy, right now I think we're kicking up close to 40 a month.
Wow.
I could be mistaken. Some of that's custom work, and we do them in batches.
Yeah.
We normally have a good inventory, but we're being careful. Right now is actually, Sean and I were talking the other day about it, because we've got extremely busy with, the only positive thing about COVID, I think everybody's trying to learn to play a banjo.
Yeah.
The sales have gone through the roof. And one thing we're very cautious of, we don't want to tell people we can deliver something in a month or 2 months and then not deliver. Sure. I've seen that happen to Anna. I say it's like overcommitting and under-delivering. So we're actually looking very serious right now at our delivery date, so we're thinking we're probably out to getting into Christmas right now.
Yeah.
Which means it's a healthy market to be in right now.
Well, I'm glad that, and I know that instrument sales across the board have been up, and probably people who are giving lessons are can't believe their luck. COVID.
Yeah, I know. And if you're a musician, it's been terrible.
It's terrible.
We haven't worked in a year.
Yeah.
Half a year at least. It's devastating.
Yeah, it has been. I feel like when, and I'm not going to say if, when the world gets back to normal and there's shows again, those first shows are going to be just joyful, and people are going to be so excited to hear music. I was lucky enough to go to one of the drive-in shows that people have been doing earlier in the summer, and just hearing music, because this is what I do for a living. I manage bands, and I help people make records, and I work with record producers. So after having not heard live music for 4 months, I heard music coming through a PA, and I was like, Yes.
That's living proof, as I said earlier. You know, people can you can improvise and always figure out a way to do something. And the music industry's really proven that they've come up with different ways.
Yeah.
There's people having small concerts in your yards and whatnot, and they're making ends meet by doing that. So it's changed to meet the situation. Hopefully, the situation will improve, but none of us know when.
Yeah.
So.
So besides tuners, you make all the other parts that comprise a banjo, all the metal parts. And so other builders come to you and order parts from you and put them on their banjos, correct?
Correct. A big part of our business is the part sales. Yeah. A couple of parts we don't sell. We're trying to keep them to ourselves just so we can be a little bit different what everybody else has got. Yeah. But no, we pretty much offer the majority of the parts. Every part we make our own washers, make every screw in the instrument. We say we don't make the fretwire yet. We don't make the strings, but everything else, I think we got covered. In fact, we're actually cutting now. Had a friend a while back said they had a walnut tree that had been hit by lightning. When we were onto that, like Flynn, you know, we were over there. We got a resaw here. We got a big Baker resaw for cutting guitar tops and whatnot. And anywhere we hear of a tree coming down, we're on it and we bring it back, cut it, and then sticker it and dry it. We have a drying room here, so right down to the log we work. Wow. It's a little bit eccentric, but it keeps it interesting.
Yeah. And how many people do you have working there with you?
I think total right now there's 5 of us, and that's one of the girls does our shipping and receiving and whatnot. There's Sean, another fellow, works with Sean, does the setup and whatnot. That's Cam. And we have another fellow starting with us now. It's just helping us with the startup of the guitar stuff. And now, unfortunately, we got him. But unfortunately for him, he's now building banjos. So we're trying to keep it the size we are. To be honest with you, we don't want to have a cookie cutter type setup. That's not what we do.
Yeah. So. Well, let's take a look at Allison deGroot, who is also, I believe she is a Canadian, and she's a fantastic banjo player. So we'll show.
I didn't know she was Canadian. That's interesting.
She is. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I think I might be wrong. I think she's from Western Canada. I don't think she's from the Toronto area. I think she's from maybe towards British Columbia or something.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll see this. She'll offer us a correction, but check her out. Watch her play. She's fantastic. Yeah.
Quite a very good player.
Yeah, she's really great. She plays with Bruce Mulsky.
Correct.
They have a trio called the Mulsky's Mountain Drifters. And
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Bruce has one of our Spun-over banjos that Kevin Enoch built.
Ah.
I know Kevin quite well, and he got some rims off me.
Nice.
Something we usually don't sell the Spun-over rims to other builders, other than people that we know well, like Kevin's one of them, and
sure.
We're kind of opening that up a little bit more to other builders right now. But we don't want to flood the market with them. It's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I'd like to add something, by the way. You're saying about earlier about recovery and whatnot. I learned something going through this whole thing. And imagine I was in the hospital for a long time, and I was pretty down mentally, and it was really down, to be honest with you. And Chris Cool arranged. I found out I started getting baskets of fruit and whatnot for people I didn't know. I got one filled with harmonicas, and it's terrible. I forget the gentleman's name. It's my memory with names again. But he plays harmonicas. He plays bluegrass music. His name won't come to me now. It's one of my. It's an age thing. I put it down to. But he sent me a basket of harmonicas, fruit basket full of harmonicas, and a note in it said, "Some people that suffer make the best music." And I'll never forget that. But from there on, I got talking to Chris and didn't think about it. And every couple of days, I would wake up in my room in the hospital, and there'd be a couple of people playing banjo, playing fiddle, whatever. I thought that, the hospital would have, Sunnybrook Hospital in Toronto is a big hospital. And I guess the staff got to really enjoy it. And what hit me was all these people I didn't know, from the word coming out that I couldn't play anymore. And suddenly all these people I didn't know turn up to play music for me. And I would say for every one person in business I met 10 people I didn't know that came to play music for me. And it really hit me. It impacted me greatly. It took me a long time to figure it out, because I figure, why is, been in business all these years, and I know a lot of people. You think a lot of them, I think maybe they didn't know what to say, maybe. But I've come to the conclusion through this whole thing that people that play music they're really artists. It's no different than a painter or a poet. And usually you find people that are artistic really wear their emotions on their sleeve, I say. They're very, not emotional, but they're compassionate people. And I think, I'm generalizing, but I think you could generalize pretty strong in that area. That a lot of people that came to help me, I never met them in my life before, and just came out of the woodwork. Yeah. So it actually, that's what got me back. In fact, the first banjo I built was, you saw in that movie, it was the one I built for Chris Cool. All that pro was cut by hand. It took a year. And I had to prove to myself, and that did it. I said, great, we can do this, and totally changed my attitude. That and the people that came to play music for me. Yeah. So I kind of feel I owe something back to the music community. It's a great community, really. Met some really great people.
It really is. And, you hear that phrase, the healing power of music, and it's so true. And if you're lucky enough to be able to play music, it can move you. Just sitting by yourself somewhere playing exercise can be so good for your soul. And listening to music, it's funny, I said to somebody yesterday, this is completely unrelated, but Eddie Van Halen passed away yesterday. Yeah. So obviously one of the true great guitar players, whether you like that type of music or not. But and my friend said there was something about when you were a kid and you listened to Van Halen, it gave you a power, or it gave you this excitement and this confidence and this feeling. And I think that's what music can do to you. A song can change your mood. It can remind you of happier times from earlier in your life. And it really is. And you're an incredible example of the healing power of music, because I don't know that you could do what you do if you didn't love it. And like you said, like when you were at your lowest, music pulled you up. And that really did. Yeah. Yeah. That's really.
I don't think if it wasn't for the music and the people I met, I don't think I'd be sitting here today, to be honest with you. Yeah. And funny, I don't even. People talk about being disabled. I don't think about it anymore, to be very honest.
Yeah.
It doesn't come to me. It's a slight annoyance at times. You don't want to be around when I actually got everybody else now strings up the instruments for me, because trying to string up the instruments with an open back banjo with one hand is a chore.
It's hard enough.
The language is blue when I have to do it, it's cursing and whatnot. So I said, somebody else do this. You can do it in 10% of the time it takes me, and no swearing.
Yeah. Well, man, thanks for talking to me. And it really is just a great story. And it for me, like when I see your banjos, I had first seen your story on Craig Evans' Banjo Builders series. and I was just amazed. And actually should get Craig on here, because his watching his videos was really inspiring for me, because I got those right when I started to play banjo, which was 10 years ago. And it just created a level, like we were saying earlier, about what music can do to you. It gave me this excitement about banjos, and seeing like the community of all people who build banjos was really fun. I used to watch the videos over and over again. And so it's really great, and it's great to talk to you, and I just appreciate it. And I'll be looking for your guitars, and when you're ready to launch the guitars, maybe you can come back on and show us a couple of them.
We'll do that for sure. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, man, and thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Check back in a couple of days for the next episode of Let's Hear It. Check out our YouTube channel, and I think we're up to 27 videos so far, so more are on the way. Just keep them going. Have a good day.